Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at a game that was played in the early title Tuesday today, April 23rd of the great year 2024. Now, after the candidates ended 2 days ago, you're probably wondering, would I try to take a long break, get away from chess, not worry about it, or do anything of that nature? However, as per my regular job, which is as a streamer first content creator, I decided to play Title Tuesday here from Toronto, even though I'm obviously, frankly, very exhausted from playing too much chess. Now, that being said, as I'm playing the early Title Tuesday, one of my opponents who I faced off against in the 8th round was none other than the 5-time world chess champion, Magnus Carlsen. Now, to put everything in context, going into this game, I was on a score of 7 points out of 7, a perfect score facing off against Magnus, who drew early in the event on 6.5 points out of 7. So without further ado, let's jump right into the action. So in this game, I start by playing the move e4, Magnus plays e6, and now I play d4. Now, one thing that I was doing a lot in this early Title Tuesday is I was having a lot of fun. I was playing moves like h4 on move number 1, trying to play for memes and themes, but against the 5-time world chess champion, sometimes you want to show some respect for the great game of chess, and also for your opponent, and you don't want to just meme left and right. So, I start by playing e4, Magnus goes e6 here, and now I play this move d4. Magnus plays d5, and I decide to trade the pawns and play knight f3. Here, Magnus plays move knight f6. Now, in the FIDE Canada's tournament, which recently concluded, Alireza Firouzja actually played the move bishop to d6 against me, and Nijat Abasov played knight f6. So I had a lot of experience in this exchange French, exchange Petrov, whatever you want to call it, but Magnus decides to play knight f6. Here I go bishop to d3, he plays the move bishop d6, and now I play queen e2. Magnus here decides to play the move queen to e7. Now, in the famed event Norway Chess, which happened earlier this year, Magnus Carlsen himself played this move queen to e2 check against Norbek Abdusattorov, and that game continued with the move bishop to e6. Now, the game would end in a draw, but Magnus had a slight advantage in that game. But here, with Magnus having the black pieces, he plays queen e7, because, of course, this is Magnus Carlsen, a player who is widely considered to be the greatest endgame player of all time. So, we trade the queens on e7 here, and now I decide to play knight c3. We get c6 here. Computer says it's a little bit dubious, but it's a very logical move as black is trying to guard the pawn on d5 and stop white from putting his knight on b5. I decide to castle. Magnus plays rook e8. I go bishop g5 here, trying to bring the last tower to the action with rook a to e1. On top of bringing the rook to the center of the board, I'm also putting pressure on the knight on f6. Magnus goes h6, I check, he plays bishop e6, and now I retreat the bishop back to d2. And here Magnus plays the move king f8. Now, as you'll notice, the computer thinks that king to f8 is a little bit dubious. It prefers some of the other moves, like knight b to d7 or bishop c7 here. But again, this is a blitz game after all, and we're simply trying to move quickly. So we get king f8. I play the move knight to e5, and now Magnus plays this move a6 here. Magnus already using quite a bit of time, and what that tells me is that Magnus already could feel a little bit of the danger of what is approaching down the road. Now, the reason a6 is actually a very good move is black would love to play c5 and chop away at white's central pawn here on d5. But if you go c5 here, white can start to use D's knights with knight to b5, and look at these knights go. The knight is hitting the bishop, it's hitting the c7 square. If you retreat, we end up with the classic fork. The knight forks the rooks and the bishop at the same time. And if you trade the bishop for the knight, I can take with the pawn to attack the knight. And after knight d7, knight c7, white is simply going to be up a rook for a horse. And in the long term, white should win. So, Magnus decides to play the move a6 here because now c5 is a threat since knight b5 is no longer an option. Here I play the move f4. Computer actually thinks knight to a4 is maybe also interesting to try and hit these dark squares on b6 and c5. But in a blitz game, sometimes you just gotta go. So I play f4. Magnus plays c5, and now I play f5 here, trying to remove the bishop from e6, and Magnus goes bishop c8. Now, one of the things that's very tricky about the situation is that you'll notice, according to the clock, I'm already up about 40 seconds here, so I'm trying to push Magnus on the clock here a little bit to get him low on time, induce a blunder if I can, and this is a situation where if Magnus has 20 minutes, probably he can defend this position correctly, but in a situation where he's trying to move quickly to avoid being down too much time on the clock, it's very difficult. So we get bishop c8. I go bishop to f4 here. Apparently, the computer wants this move knight takes d5, sacking the horse. Oh my god. Because after knight takes knight, there's knight to g6. Takes. Oh, wow. And if black goes knight f6, you sack the rook. Takes, king g8, and you've rook e8. Bishop f8, rook takes f8, which is simply checkmate. Now, obviously, in a blitz game, you have to decide where to use your time. I was not using a whole lot of time here, and this is simply an amazing sacrifice that I did not see whatsoever. It also highlights why I'm only a mere 2800 level player versus Stockfish, which is 35 to 3600 level. So back to the game. I decided to play the move bishop to f4 here, and now Magnus plays the move rook d8, which is a slight mistake. What Magnus probably should have played here was this move bishop to e7 to avoid any ideas like knight to g6, which creates a fossil. Say you take on d4, there's knight g6 check with the classic fossil, and after pawn takes knight, bishop takes king to g8 here. White can simply play this move knight takes d5, and now white is almost certainly winning, because after takes, if you take the horse, there's check, king f7, rook f8, checkmate. And if you go to h7, there's f takes g6, which is boom, bing, bang, and another checkmate. So Magnus decides to play the move rook to d8 instead, and now I go knight to a4, trying to jump with my horse towards b6. Now, keep in mind, I'm still moving very quickly at this point in time, so I'm really trying hard to go for the dub. Magnus plays move c4, and now I play the move bishop to e2. Now, one of the things that you guys would have noticed during my live stream of this game as I was doing my live commentary on my Kick channel is that I could sort of already feel the classic je ne sais quoi. Now, we're obviously here in Canada where they speak this French language, and there's this great saying je ne sais quoi where it's like you can sense something, you don't quite know what it is, but you can sense something. And I could already sense the je ne sais quoi here. But I didn't want to burn a whole lot of time. Now, one of the things you'll notice in a lot of Blitz games, whether it's in Title Tuesday, whether it's in the Chess Champions Tour, is there are moments when you need to use time, and knowing when to use the time versus when to move quickly is probably the single most valuable skill that one can possess. So I play the move bishop e2, which is wrong. What I should have done is I should have sacked the bishop with bishop takes pawn takes bishop, and knight to b6, forking the rook and the bishop. If black goes rook a7, a very logical move. Now, again, I have the fossil with knight to g6, checking the king. And after takes, I win the bishop. I fork the two towers at the same time. And I'm going to win one of these towers for free, and I'm definitely much better. Now, again, in a blitz game, I would be cautious to say that white is winning, because after rook d8 takes and g5, the horse is kind of stuck on the edge, and black has easy ideas like knight to d5, maybe b5 and rook d7. And if black's knights get into the action, all bets are off. And of course, last but not least, this is Magnus Carlsen himself. So after c4, I play the move bishop to e2. He goes bishop f5, and this is an epic fail for Magnus. Now, again, at this point, I'm still trying to push him on the clock. I'm already up 1 minute, and he moves quickly to try and avoid running himself too low on time. Now, this is a huge blunder because after knight b6 and rook to a7 here, I am up 1 minute on the clock. I have the table set up for me in the exact same manner that Fabiano Caruana had the table set up for himself when he played in the final round of the candidates against Jan Nepomniachtchi. Now, what I mean is that in this position, if I play the right move, I win the game. Now, I'm up a minute on the clock, but unfortunately here, I only use 12 seconds, and I promptly play this very poor move c3. Now, whether you want to call it the Magnus effect or it being a blitz game or not, just not sensing the right moment here. If I had used 30 seconds, I probably would have spotted the winning variation, which is to play knight to d7, checking the king. If black takes with a rook, I take the rook, and here everything collapses. I check the king, I win the bishop, I win the game. If black takes with a bishop, again, I check him on d6, king here takes, and I'm simply up a clean tower here, and I win the game. But what I think, didn't see, or the reason I didn't really consider, is black can simply take back with the bishop. But now after I take the bishop, he moves the king, I trade the bishop for the horse, and now I can sack the rook for the knight on f6, and after takes, white has a knight and a bishop for the rook, and after rook d8, let's just say bishop to g4, for example, white is simply winning the game as the bishop and the knight are worth a lot more than a rook. Of course, a bishop and a knight combined, they're worth 6. A rook is worth 5, and even in this modern day of Common Core math, generally 6 is worth more than 5. So, back to the game. After rook to a7, I make this move c3 fairly quickly. A big miss by me as the show goes on. Magnus now plays bishop e6, which is an excellent move, and I play the move bishop takes h6, sacking the bishop, hoping that after pawn takes bishop and rook takes knight, the material will remain balanced, and I have these knights towards the center of the board, and it's a very complex middle game. So after I take, Magnus plays the move knight to e4, which is a big mistake apparently, because now I play this move bishop to f4, also a blunder. In this position, apparently I'm supposed to go bishop g4. Now keep in mind, at this point in the game, I'm up a minute and a half on the clock. I have 90 more seconds, but like an immature, impatient child, I play this move bishop f4 fairly quickly, rather than using my time and spotting the winning tactic, which is this move bishop to g4. Now this move is winning because if black takes a bishop, I take this bishop, and the pin is simply too strong here. The whole central part of the board is collapsing for black. The chain is collapsing, the king is weak. You're getting mated one way or another. And if black chooses to take the bishop here, now I can take the pawn. After king here takes. If king h8, I have knight to f7, checkmating the king in the corner pocket. And if black goes the other way, which is to f8 here, I think I have rook to f1 check, king to e8, and now check, king e7, check, king e6, check, block, takes, and the king gets stuck in the middle of the board, and it's game over on the spot. So it would have been really good if I'd used my 90-second advantage here, but instead, like an impatient blitz player, I play the move bishop f4. Now, one of the reasons that I'm actually kind of annoyed at myself for doing this is because I did recently play in the Canada's tournament, which was a classical chess event. So having played classical chess so recently, I probably should be calculating a little bit more and moving a bit slower. But sometimes you just got that urge and you just got to move. So I played bishop f4. Magnus goes knight c6, and now I play the move knight a4, which is a huge mistake. Now, Magnus, of course, down to 18 seconds here, is not playing super precise moves. He trades the horses, and now I take with the pawn. Now, what both of us, I think, miss is that after bishop takes knight, pawn takes in b5, I suspect we both assume bishop to e3 touches the rook on a7, and black has to move the rook. I get knight c5, and in this position, we're in a simple endgame where I have the two b's. But in this position, after bishop to e3, black can sack the rook by taking the horse, and after takes, now black has D's knights in return for the tower, and 2 knights are worth a lot more than a rook. Once again, 6 is worth more than 5. So back to the game. Magnus takes with the knight. I take back, and now he plays this move bishop to c7. I go bishop to e3. He plays the move rook to a8, and now I go bishop to f3. b5 is played. I go knight c5. We trade the towers, or the horses. He goes king g8, and now I play bishop d4. Now, at this point, the position is pretty balanced, but I am up 1 minute on the clock here, and I've got a nice little blockade in the center with the bishop and the pawns. Additionally, I have a couple of wooden shields here as well. So with the wooden shields and a lot of play, I feel like I should be doing very well. So after bishop to d4, we get rook a to b8 played here. Now I play the move a3, we get a5, and I bring my king towards the center with king to f2. Magnus plays b4, we trade the pawns here, and now I go king to e3. After king to e3, we get takes, and now the move rook to b3 is played. And here I play the move rook to a1. Now I'm still hoping here to try and play for more, but in general, the position is very, very balanced. And one of the things about Magnus Carlsen is that he is a very, very good player in endgames, even with very little time on the clock. Now he's only getting 1 second per move, but Magnus starts defending this position completely flawlessly. He goes bishop b6, I trade, I bring the rook over to b1, we get rook b8, I take, and now I play rook a2. Magnus goes rook b1, and now I go king to d4. Now at this point, I'm up 30 seconds on the clock. Material is even, but I feel like maybe I'm a little bit better because these pawns on d5 and c4 can be targeted quite easily. But Magnus here starts playing great. He goes rook to c1. Now if I trade on d5 after takes, and rook to c3, black is going to draw his endgame in his sleep. So I play the move h4. We get king h7. I go rook to a5, desperately trying to win this pawn without hanging the pawn on c3. Magnus goes rook h1. I play bishop takes d5. And now the game starts to peter out towards a draw. Now, of course, here I could have played the move h5. The reason that I didn't play this is, again, I thought after king to h6, where is my advantage? If I take the pawn on d5 here, black can simply take. And after rook takes d5, he throws in... I thought he could throw in the check here and maybe go king h5. And maybe draw the game. It's probably a draw perfect play, but the show goes on. Instead, I play the move bishop takes d5 here because now if black plays rook to d1 check, I can take the pawn and the rook guards his bishop on d5. Magnus decides to play rook h4. I go king to c5. We get the swap of the bishops, and now he plays rook g4. I go rook a2, king g6, and now the game effectively peters out to a draw very quickly. I go rook f2, rook h4. We get a bunch of dilly-dallying all over the board. Obviously, I'm way up on time here, so I kind of want to keep the game going. But Magnus does not flag. Instead, he continues to play the best moves. And eventually, we end up in a situation where after a lot of repetitions, I decide finally that I need to capture the pawn. 1 second. We keep going. And right around here, after a bunch more moves, finally, I play the move rook to c7, giving Magnus the opportunity to capture the pawn on g3. After rook g3, I take on c4. We get rook e3, king d6, and now both sides start pushing p. Black tries to push a g-pawn down the board, and white tries to push the c-pawn up the board. So here we get rook to c5, king f4, c4, g5, rook c7 is played, and now Magnus goes rook d3, king e6, g4, rook g7, g3, c5, rook c3, king d6, king f3, c6, g2, c7, and now Magnus sacks the rook for the pawn on c7, and after takes, king to f2, We get check, king e2, rook g7, king f2, and the game ends with a repetition, as either I will have to give up my rook for the pawn on g2, or black will get a queen, in which case I have to sack, and if I don't sack and I go into this endgame is a theoretical win for black with a queen versus a rook. So after this repetition, the game ends in a draw. With that draw, I moved to 7.5 points out of 8. Magnus moved to 7 points out of 8. I maintained my half-point lead. Magnus would go on to lose in the 10th round to one of the players in the candidates, Alireza Firouz, in a very tough game. I would go on to win the rest, or I would draw one more game and then win my final 2 games, including the final round where I beat Ruud Mkhitaryan, who overlooked a mate and won. This would give me my 70th Title Tuesday victory. So it was a huge run in this Title Tuesday, but at any rate, my focus is on this game against Magnus. So those of you guys who enjoy my content here on YouTube, make sure that you do not forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I will be back soon with some more Title Tuesday videos, some more recaps, everything along the road. But hope you guys had a good one. And I will see you guys all very, very soon. See you. Bye.